All right, good morning, everyone. I want to call the Nevada Commission on Ethics meeting to order. At this time, we'll do roll call. Chair Wallen here, Vice Chair Towler,
Here.
Commissioner Lowry,
Here.
Commissioner Moran,
Here.
Commissioner Olson,
Here.
Commissioner Scheer,
Here.
and Commissioner Yen. I think she's here. Oh, barely heard her. All right, for staff, we have Executive Director Armstrong.
Here.
Commission Counsel Bassett here. We have Investigator Terry.
Here.
Senior Legal Researcher Pfaff. Here. And Executive Assistant Pedrosa.
Here.
And, okay, perfect. This time we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time, I would like to ask the Executive Director whether the Commission has received any public comment by email to be read into the record.
This is Executive Director Armstrong. The Commission has not received any public comment by email to be read into the record.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who are attending either in person or virtually who want to provide public comment? Anyone on Zoom?
There are members of the public on Zoom, but neither have asked to make public comment at this time.
All right. Okay. Next item, approval of the March 2024 Commission meeting minutes. All commissioners may participate on this item. Are there any changes or additions or corrections to the minutes? All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as read.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, item 4, discussion and approval of a written opinion concerning ethics complaint case number 23-056C regarding Hillary Sheev, Mayor, City of Reno, State of Nevada. I want to note that Vice Chair Towler and Commissioner Lowry and Yen served on the review panel for this matter and are precluded from participating in this item pursuant to NRS 281A-2204. And although Commissioner Yen was assigned to be on the review panel for this matter, she disclosed and abstained and did not participate. For the record, proper notice has been provided and waivers were received regarding this item. Right. I just want to make one note that on the opinion, we're going to clarify that Commissioner Yen disclosed and abstained. Not just that she was on the review panel, so to make sure the information is consistent.
Definitely,
Yes.
Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott. There's a footnote in item 4 that talks about the disclosure. The intent is to take all of that block text from item 4 and include it in footnote 1 as well, so that it's clear that she disclosed and abstained both places where it's mentioned in the opinion. So thank you for that catch, Madam Chair.
Other commissioners, comments, questions? All right, if not, then I will entertain a motion to approve the written opinion as presented and corrected in case number 23-056C, Sheevy. And then instruct Chief Deputy Attorney Gregory Ott, Acting Commission Counsel on this matter, to finalize the opinion as to legal form and cause it to be properly served on all parties. I'll ask for a motion for that. Is there a motion?
I still haven't seen the opinion.
Oh.
So I still don't have it in my email. Haven't had a chance to review it. I've gone back through my email. I do not have it.
She sent it to you
I've said it twice
this morning, right?
this morning and he got it first time too. It was-
You did, check your spam. That's weird.
Madam Chair, I have to say that I don't, Commissioner Olson, for the record, I don't have it either.
It was sent,
It says agenda item 4.
agenda item 4, and it was sent from our senior legal researcher.
Yeah, I do have it now. I refreshed and I just received it.
Okay,
I will send one to Commissioner Olson.
yeah. Then we'll just take, what, 15 minutes to? Yeah, so we'll just take a 15-minute recess so you guys can read the opinion before we vote on this matter, okay? All right, we're gonna go ahead and reconvene this item, item number 4. Discussion and approval of a written opinion concerning ethics complaint case number 23-056C regarding Hillary Sheeby, Mayor, City of Reno, State of Nevada. So at this time, questions, comments? Now that you have had a chance to read it?
Yeah, the comment that I would have, and Madam Chair, Commissioner Scherer, for the record, the comment that I would have is that I think if I'd had a chance to read both opinions before, and perhaps I should have anticipated what would be in the other opinion, I would have noted that additionally, that in addition to the legislative history and the language of the statute, I don't believe that the prior precedent directly addresses this particular situation. And secondly, that to the extent it does, it has to give way to the language of the statute.
So are you suggesting a change or?
I would like to make that change to the and I don't have the section now, the section of the opinion that is the opinion denying the executive director's motion for summary judgment, or
5.
Okay, so you're on page 10.
section 5. Yes, page 10 is where it starts. I probably noted at the bottom, some more on page 12 or page 11. Most of the precedent that's out there involve attorneys themselves as opposed to clients. And I think the one case where there was a client, there was a substantial and continuing relationship because of the number of matters that the length of the relationship.
So is your desire to propose changes to the section that you authored in response to the language of the other section? Is that kind of where you're going with this comment?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I did not see the other opinion until today. So when I drafted mine, I drafted without having seen the other opinion.
So certainly, I mean, it's the commission's opinion, and you guys can pass the motion and revise in the way that you want to. One of my concerns whenever you have sort of dueling perspectives is each side's not going to comply with the other side's, or is not going to necessarily agree. And there may be some back and forth, which is fine. So you could either, I guess, craft the language today or postpone to another meeting where you want to do a revised version that gives you a little bit more time, so you're not crafting on the fly, because I know that you just looked at it in the last half hour or so.
Yeah, I think my preference would be that we delay it so we have time to, read what gets put in there. So I tend to agree with our acting commission counsel. So
Is this something that can be addressed, can be then voted on by email? Or do we have to bring it back to another full meeting?
it has to be a full meeting, right?
Yeah, I'm never gonna recommend anybody vote on anything via email. I don't think that the open meeting law allows that. I think you gotta be at a meeting
Well, we
with
could,
the public's ability to attend and observe.
could we jump on a Zoom? Since we're not having a meeting in May?
You could, yes, as Executive Director Armstrong, you could schedule a meeting in May just for this purpose and have it be Oh, I would have to double check with the most recent changes to the open meeting law. If you have a contested case under the Administrative Procedures Act and you're doing a final approval of the order, we would want to double check that it could be all Zoom. Greg might know off the top.
Yeah, my recollection is that you can still do a Zoom meeting. You have to simply make sure that the person who is the subject of the contested case has the ability to attend. So there are probably some additional hoops, but I think you can do a Zoom meeting. And I'll certainly review that to make sure, but I'm confident you can
Well,
do
you
it.
could probably just do the Zoom meeting from the commission office and then. So if the person wants to attend in person, they can come to the commission office.
Correct.
Yep.
You do that.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll just go and table this at this time. We need.
Yeah, I would be fine with it. I just want to delay it until the next in-person meeting, which I think is in June in Winnemucca, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll just do a meeting sometime in May to do this, okay?
Great.
All right. Okay. We need to take a motion to.
You don't need a motion to table.
Okay, all right. All right, next item. Moving right along here. Item 5, Executive Director's Agency Status Report. Executive Director Armstrong, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Executive Director Armstrong. For the Executive Director's report, there's a written report in your materials. The first item is a quarterly case log, which is for your review. I will note that the commissioners have a confidential version of that report. And so if you have a question on a specific case, if you just ask it by case number, then I can provide those. But in general, this report is to make sure that the commission is keeping up on its work and that we have a few lingering cases from fiscal year 23 that are in the final stages, but anything older than that is just in either compliance mode or is the subject of a petition for judicial review. So we got rid of stale cases and super old cases. We currently have 4 active investigations that have been substantial in work. I want to thank Aaron for the hard work on those. And we're getting those ready for review panel and some new cases coming up. So the bottom line on the quarterly case log is we're keeping up with cases, we're getting them completed in a timely manner. And so I'm happy to answer any questions on the case log before I proceed.
Fellow commissioners, questions? Okay, all right.
In terms of the rest of the report, you can see there's some recent training we've done in terms of education and outreach, including, and I hope it's the Psychiatric Association. I forgot to double check what the P was in the group, but they're putting together a resource for the members of their association. And so we filmed a session that will be on demand for those members of that group. And then we've renewed a memorandum of understanding with Clark County, who requires ethics training of their individuals. And so what they're doing is they're taking our content from the YouTube channel and putting it into their own learning management system, and they'll report those numbers on a regular basis. We've also received lots of requests for training recently. And so you can see some of our upcoming requests throughout the summer and early fall. This will be the last time I include an education and outreach section of the executive director's report. Starting in June and going forward, Sam will have a report that they submit for you. So they're contacting other ethics commissions to look at their education reports to their commission to show, so that you have a really focused education and outreach report with your meetings. The budget update, we're going to talk about the budget building for fiscal years 26 and 27 today. For the current fiscal year, we anticipate a work program in category 4, which is our operating expenses. And we're continuing to monitor category 1 because of the budgeting of the COLAs in particular. Most agencies have a shortfall in category 1. With our vacancies, I think we'll probably be able to finish the fiscal year without a work program to cover that category 1 budget item. But category 4, we're going to need a work program. However, all of the expenses are within our total budgeted amount, so we're not having to dip into a contingency account or ask for funds outside of our budget. And then we have upcoming meetings in June in Winnemucca and August 21st in Reno. If the commission wants to do the May meeting for agenda item number 4, May 15th would appear to be the best date for that, because I've recently reached out to the members of the review panel, and I know that that week worked best for Commissioner Olson for review panel, so that would probably be best for our all person, or the Zoom one, if you want to do the Shibi one in May. And that is it for my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the executive director, in his report? Well, it's nice to see we're keeping up on our cases. Yeah. Kudos to the staff, for all your hard work. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the executive director's report as presented.
I so
Agency
moved.
manager. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, item 6. Item 6, review of current and proposed agency performance measures. Executive Director Armstrong, please give us your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize how much you're gonna have to hear from me for the rest of the meeting, but we're gonna get a lot of good stuff done today. I promise administratively for the commission. So we talked about taking a look at our performance measures, both the ones formally through our budgetary process and then some internal metrics. And so the materials for agenda item 6 include that. What you can see included in the materials are the formal report out of the budget system with all of the details. I put together a summary sheet on top to make it a little bit more digestible. We have 4 performance measures and currently 5 population workload items. My recommendation is to adjust all 4 of the performance measures. And I'll just briefly talk about those and open up for questions. So currently our budget performance measure is the number of ethics in government law classes provided. I'm recommending adjusting that to the total number of individuals completing an ethics training course, because that gives us, I think, a better measure of the scope of our reach. The second one is an interesting one, is relates to advisory opinions, and it says the average days to issue an advisory opinion. And when you dive into the methodology in the NEBS budget, it says it's the date the request of the advisory opinion is heard or submitted to the date of the final opinion. And so that I don't think really measures our customer service and the kind of the quickness in which we can get an advisory opinion done. So my recommended adjustment would just be to go from the date it is received until the date it is issued to the person who requested it. There are some delays that can occur that are not the fault of the commission in that process, but I still think that performance measure is the best performance measure to talk about what kind of level of service we're providing to the people that are our customers. So the adjustment would be to change that methodology, which is currently from the date. And I actually don't think, like in taking a look at it again this morning, like the numbers, it should be closer to like 14 every time, because by the time we submit it to you by email, it's about 14 days before it gets to the person. But there's a bunch of time in that front period where we could be not doing a great job of being diligent and getting the work done. So I think if you do the date received to the date issued, that's a better performance measure. The next one is also kind of outdated. It says the number of complaint hearings, which deep in there, it talks about what a hearing is. My recommendation is just to do the number of complaint cases resolved, because that shows you how many you actually processed that year, regardless of when they came in. And that could be through, a stipulated agreement, an adjudicatory hearing, a jurisdictional analysis. There's something to think about, is you could say, I think even though it takes time and you guys work on those jurisdictional recommendations, maybe the better performance metric is the number of cases that are investigated that are resolved, because those are the bigger, heavier lift. The last one, which I think is a weird performance measure, is the number of judicial cases in which the commission is named or interested. I think that's fine to calculate how many cases that you have, because that is a workload for the commission council. But I don't think it's reflective of like quality of performance, and so my only recommendation is to adjust that into the workload section, because it does measure workload, but it's not really a performance. I don't think in the traditional sense of a performance measure. You can see our population workload, so like the number of state and local employees served, number of new complaints, number of cases investigated, new advisory requests filed. And then there's one that is abstract advisory opinions issued. And I would make this adjustment just to have the total number of advisory opinions issued, because that shows you how many you did. Especially with our adjustment in the advisory opinion process, where we're not issuing an advisory opinion for every case. I think you just go with total number of advisory opinions issued. And then on the second page are some internal metrics. So I guess if we want to have a discussion about the formal ones in the budget process, and start there, and then I can discuss some of the internal metrics and we can go from there.
Fellow commissioners, questions, comments? All right, you know I'm gonna have questions.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm glad you're kind of changing these things up, because that was one of my pet peeves when I was controller, that performance measures in the state were a joke, and they still are. So one of the things, you talk about in the training, I don't know if you can do it or not, but it would be interesting. The numbers might not look too good in the beginning, but I prefer percentages than to numbers. Because numbers don't tell you anything, right? So like if we could do percentages in this case, like base it on number of employees by city, county, and state. So what percentage of state employees are we training? What percentage of city and county? Because that would be a better indicator to see where we might be missing the mark and need to kind of focus. So that's one thing I'd like you to consider. And I know in the beginning, it's gonna look like, oh, we're only training 2% of everybody. But with everything that you have planned with the online learning tool, I think we can start capturing a greater percentage. And then the advisory opinion, I liked what you're doing for that. I think that's a good thing. The number of for the complaints, okay, where we're changing that to the number of complaints. I would like to see something that says, okay, again, percentages. So what percentage of cases, what percentage of complaints are dismissed that we just don't have jurisdiction? What percentage do we go and investigate? And maybe even what percentage do we dismiss after investigating? I mean, percentages mean so much more.
Yeah, I think, and we do capture those like in our intro, we can put the percentages. I'm just trying to figure out which measures
Would be good for.
are good in the budget that's presented to the, and not numbers that are good so that we look good,
Mhm.
but that as they're making decisions about whether they should fund our initiatives or not, I think those, like the pure volume is more impactful than, I like the percentages in terms of the ethics
Mhm.
classes.
Okay.
And I think we should keep the percentages of what happens to each type of complaint, but I think for the core performance measure,
Just give them the numbers.
yeah.
Madam
Or-
Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Olson.
Commissioner Olson, for the record, I agree with the percentages. However, is it possible or too much of a headache to put both the number and the percentage?
I mean, it is, we can easily get that data and we report most of that data in our annual report. I'm just thinking about the official report for the legislative budget
Yeah.
making process.
Yeah,
We-
and I understand that. I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
if they look, if you have, just pick a number, 2 events and your percentage shows 100%. Well, if you see 100% of 2, it means something a little different. At least it looks a little different. I think both numbers are appropriate. That's just one opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think that I get what you're saying about having the number of cases. I think that's, the legislature looks at that, but maybe percentage increase in percentage change in caseload.
Yeah, and I would note down in the population and workloads, we have number of new cases filed, new complaints filed, and number of cases investigated. So they do get those numbers and we can do the percentages
Yeah,
in
your
terms of.
percentages down on there.
Because it's about, right, where the last couple of years, we're at about 30, we're about a third, right? About a third of the cases that come in, we accept jurisdiction and go forward. 2/3, we don't have jurisdiction over. That's pretty consistent.
Mhm.
So those are reflected in the workload. The resolution, like the reason why the complaints resolved is that's showing other work, right? That's showing the completion of cases and
Mhm.
we can talk about that for each of those. You know, our executive assistant has to do work and our investigator has to do work and the senior legal researcher has to do work. So to tell that story, but I can play with it and see
Yeah.
which items, percentages and the numbers make sense.
Yeah, I think I get your point as far as the, on the budget, putting down the number of complaints that we receive, because that's workload and that's where we fund. But if we have captured that other information just for our internal purposes to see what we're doing, how we're doing.
And we all, well, not always, but typically we'll have a budget hearing where we can dive into where we can tell our story with those other numbers, other than the budget report that goes in.
Okay. Yeah, and then, down in your population workloads again, have the numbers and percentages. I think tells a better story. And
Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
the second page is just proposed internal data metrics and we collect a lot of data. You can look at the annual report to see what we collect. I tried to narrow these down into something we might report. You get the quarterly case log, which is helpful to look at, but it doesn't quite tell a story unless you really know what to look for. And so these would be concrete metrics that we could report on a quarterly basis and give you confidence as commissioners in terms of that we're getting the job done and we're doing the good work. So those internal metrics that I would propose we regularly report on would be the length of investigation, which is the order from authorization of investigation to review panel determination. I think where the commission has gotten behind in the past, that is a part where that has occurred. I know when Ms. Bassett came on board, there were lots of cases that were older and challenging. So and then the number of cases resolved during the fiscal year, including those, that's sort of in our caseload now, but to report that on a regular basis so you know what are resolved. And again, that one maybe we look at it as a percentage. And I kind of have set, and maybe we add it there too, as like an internal goal where by the end of the fiscal year, it's gonna be, it gets all confusing when you have fiscal years and calendar years, but by the end of the fiscal year, all of the cases from the previous calendar year are done with investigations. To me, that's kind of an internal metric of, if we get a case sometime in 2023, the investigation is completed by July 1st of 2024. I think to me that is a good, there's always going to be an outlier. Well, not always, but there may be an outlier, but in general, for the subject matter we have, going beyond 6 months for an investigation, I don't think we need to do this time.
Okay.
And then in terms of advisory opinions, the internal one is the time from when the request was filed from the time when it's submitted to the commission. So this is basically from the time it comes in, how long does it take for the team at the office to get it to you as the commission? Because that I think is an area where you could see unnecessary delays. And so if you keep on top of that number, I think it's helpful. Again, some of that, like if we've asked and we're trying to get better about, like if we ask for information and they refuse to provide it or don't respond, then their advisory opinion gets dismissed because they're not engaging in the process of that. We give them like 2 warnings and then We just don't need to have cases sitting out forever. Like, if it's not important to them, then we can move on. Then the number of abstract opinions issued. So we took this from our workload one and put it here because it is helpful to understand that extra work of creating an abstract. And with your change in process so that it's not abstract every time, I think it's good for the commission to keep on top of how many abstracts are you producing to help further the availability of case law and instruction out there for folks. And then something I've talked about Ms. Bassett with is actually collecting customer feedback, which I don't think we've done in the past, but you know, you receive an advisory opinion and you get like a quick five question survey. Like, was this opinion comprehensible? Like, did it help you? You know, like, is there anything about this process that we can improve? Because one of our guiding principles is to keep the requesters of advisory opinions in mind. And we've never in a formal way asked them what they think. We get an occasional, I got a call on one recently where they called like right away and just like had lots of praise and thanks for the staff and the opinion, and they thought it was great. And those are great little anecdotes, but by formally collecting that feedback, it could help us shape that process. And on the education and outreach front, the number of our social media following, which I've occasionally reported, so that we can track the effectiveness of the online learning management system, the number of courses completed by users. And then again, something I've talked about with Sam is they're looking at like, how do we get feedback from folks after we do a training, right? Like we get, oh yeah, that was a great training, or yeah, that was like not a great training. I think our current and best feedback is they ask us to come back the next year. It means it was helpful. But you know, this is an area where we get like direct we have customers and we can get that feedback and it can help
Have you
shape.
thought about like, you know, when you go to a continuing education course, you have an evaluation form.
Yeah, it's
Or something
the
like
one
that.
that I have seen most frequently now when I'm at different conferences and is like the last page of the slide is a QR code that takes you to a 5-question thing, like, was this good or bad, or would you improve? So that is that's on our radar. And then administrative, I'm trying to think of just some administrative stuff. We want to be able to capture the number of public records requests received. We changed our internal procedures so that now every public records request goes in our system, so that's easier to collect. And then the number of media inquiries, which we don't have a great way of tracking right now. But we needed those numbers to justify the position that Sam is in and helps with that PIO functionality. And then the number of budgetary work programs required, because to me that shows our the quality of our budget building and budget spending processes. So those are like, again, internal ones that we can always change. But when I tried to dive into each of our functions and determine what are some metrics that might be helpful for the commission to know that, you know, that let you know what's happening kind of behind the curtain in the office, these would be the ones to assist. So I'm happy to toss it out there for thoughts and comments and whatnot.
Any other comments from commissioners? I made all my comments. All right. With that, then I will ask for a motion to direct the executive director to bring a draft of these changes that we proposed of the commission's current agency performance measures and internal metrics for tracking commission performance back to our June meeting for final approval. So do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Next item, item 7, initial strategic plan survey. Executive Director Armstrong, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that we need to do is adopt a strategic plan. And so both the members of the commission and staff received a survey, really a SWOT analysis survey with some additional questions. And those results are in your packet under agenda item 7. In terms of the process of strategic planning, you know, the first one is to really take temperature of where you are. And then what would be helpful for us today is to kind of land on some strategic direction and goals and objectives. So you can see there in terms of our strengths, the staff and commission operations were noted as strengths. There are some weaknesses in some of the operational items. technology, and then public perception is a one also in terms of where where we're at currently with some of the high profile cases. Opportunities, training and outreach remains an opportunity for the commission, and then there's some operational efficiency that we can be doing. And then threats would, there's basically two different types of things, political items, and like, for example, the lack of the commission filled positions. And then just operational items in terms of the recruitment of staff and, any sort of case specific decisions that impact consistency and enforcement of efforts. One of the things I did in the survey was ask the comments were anonymous, but to identify staff or commission, because I always like to see if there's a gap between staff perception and commission perception. And there was not, which I think is always good, where we're all on the similar page. I think probably the item that staff are more aware of than the commissioners is some of the barriers in our technology. So on the second page, one of the questions I asked is how closely are we aligned to our mission and guiding principles? And the average answer was at 4. You'll see a graphic about our top 2 priorities. Basically took the responses and put them into categories, and you can see the bigger boxes mean there were more responses that aligned with that topic. And then I'll toss it to you for the next steps and questions for discussion is really where do we want to head in our strategic direction in terms of our overarching vision? I identified 2 or 3 major priorities with broad strokes. And then I think it's important to talk about and make sure that we have like, what is the actually end game? How do we know if we've succeeded? So in the packet, we included a couple of examples from other states. You'll see that Oregon and South Dakota are fairly simple. And New Mexico's is very detailed. I think a lot of that is because New Mexico just became an ethics commission a couple of years ago. And so they're in their infancy trying to figure out where to head. And so there's a lot more discussion there. I think one about the length of Oregon or South Dakota is appropriate for us for our strategic plan. But one thing I think is lacking in those 2 plans are really some like kind of concrete, how do you know you succeeded? So Madam Chair, I'll toss it to you. I think if I could get from the commission in this one, those 2 or 3 strategic priorities and what we think success looks like, then we can work to create a draft document for you for your review in June.
All right, fellow commissioners, comments. I might just go one by one on your comments, observations. All right, Vice Chair Towler, comments. Where do you think we want to head?
Yeah, just in general, yeah, I think the direction is good. Some of my comments were staffing, of course, first. We're in one of those agencies, like one that similar to one that I ran back in the day, where the population grows and the work grows, but the amount of staff does not match the increase in population in Nevada. Kind of gets forgotten about. And so I think there has been growth in position staffing, but I think if you look at historical staffing amounts, I remember working with the Ethics Commission, I think in 2011, and there was maybe 1 or 2 fewer positions then than there are now. And it's just, it's unfortunate because there's a lot of work. And so luckily there's a great group of people there now that put in a ton of work and get a lot done. But I think long-term, trying to continue the path that Executive Director Armstrong's been on, which is, creating new positions. It just takes a lot of work. We were able to have 1 position filled. I remember, I think the last time a position was filled was the current vacant position, right? And that was now years ago. So it takes years to get a position. So I think just not giving up on that is a goal I would have. The other, goal that I see is trying to increase respect for the commission's decisions. You know, I put in the review that I compared it to the Gaming Control Board, and you know, my perspective, having worked with different state agencies, you know, if the Gaming Control Board decides something, then that's the decision, and it's pretty well respected. And we're not, you know, in any means disrespected by and large, but I do get this feeling, you know, from the public or from news reports that when the Ethics Commission makes a decision, there's sometimes a question like, well, did they make the right decision? Is that correct? You know, there's not, yeah, I just want, you know, an authority, an increase in an authority. I think about, you know, the open meeting law. I remember that's kind of evolved. Years and years ago, I've been practicing, I think 18 years now in Nevada, and always have been involved with the open meeting law. 18 years ago, people were like, well, it's the Attorney General's office. Are they reading that right? You don't hear that as much anymore, or at least I don't. When people violate the open meeting law, it's okay, they violated it. That's a problem. And so getting to that point where our decisions are respected to a higher level, I think that would be, you know, something I'd like to see. I don't know whether you do that with things we've been doing, things we've been working on, which is outreach, which is communication, which is consistency. I think that's how you'd achieve those goals. But just trying to maybe look to different, there's probably more creative ways than what I can think of to try to get to that level of, you know, respect for the authority of what the Ethics Commission is and what it does and the decisions that we make. Those are kind of my goals and my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I agree a fair amount with what Commissioner Towler said. I think one of the reasons that there is, using your term, a perception of no respect, and I disagree. I think there is a lot of respect, but I think part of it is at times this commission has been all over the board on similar issues. And I can give you what I see as examples. You know, one time we go hard direction one way and the other one we're soft, and it may be the same or similar type of action that was taken. And I see that as a problem. We need to be a little more consistent, not go over and beat the living daylights out of this person and then say, okay, we'll let you go this time on that person. I do see that as a problem.
Commissioner Lowry. What do you think are 2 to 3 major priorities would be?
One major priority for me would be the education and outreach piece. And clearly we have a lot of opportunity there with our new position. And I agree with you in terms of how to measure success. I think percentages are really important and really help to tell the full story. And so that piece to me would be a priority. I also agree with Commissioner Towler or Vice Chair Towler in terms of the respect piece. And I wonder if that harkens back to education and outreach, but in a kind of a different way. It's still education and outreach. And in terms of certainly responding head on to perceived inconsistencies in the commission's decisions in terms, again, of education and outreach. While some cases might look the same, when you get down to the facts and the individuals and the history, so on and so forth, they may not be the same. And so again, I think that comes down to our PIO, to our written decisions, distinguishing cases from one another, and then education and outreach. So I think those are the two for me. They're the commission's reputation and the commission being viewed in the state as the go-to on ethics issues.
Mr. Yin, your priorities.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like Commissioner Lowry and I are usually on the same page, and again, we're on the same page because exactly what she said is mine as well. I've said it on the record so many times that I really want the commission to be viewed as an educational arm instead of a punishing arm, and I know that that's a main focus, and especially with Sam and the work that they are going to do is going to increase that even more. And then my other concern is also the reputation based on the inconsistent decisions, because I do think that we've had some inconsistent decisions, publicly perception inconsistent decisions. And just like what Commissioner Lowry said is what we need to do, which is make sure that the facts are distinguished within the written opinion. And I know with our new commission counsel, Bassett, she's got the experience that she's been here, the depth of knowledge to make sure that anytime it looks like we're having an inconsistent decision on the law, that if we made the decision because of different facts, those facts are clearly spelled out, because that I think is the biggest trouble that we have, is people thinking that we're treating claimant or subjects differently and punishing ones. And one, I don't want to look like we're punishing. I want to look like exactly what we're doing, which is following our statutory law. And two, that we are more focused on education as opposed to punishment. So I think that the commission is headed in the right direction. Since I came on almost 8 years ago, I've seen it consistently moving towards the education piece and being more consistent in decisions. And I just want to keep that as our main focus.
Thank you. Commissioner Scheer, priorities.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, the priority, I think, is to make sure we're adhering to the statute. We are a creature of statute. We have specific jurisdiction we're given by the statute. I think we need to follow that and stick to it. And I think that will produce consistency. And I agree also that we then need to do outreach and education and make sure that the public knows, you know, if we dismiss a complaint, it's not because we think the person necessarily acted correctly, but it's because it's outside our jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction is very limited to public officers, potentially future public officers, and former public officers in certain cases. And it's then limited only to, you know, what's in the statutory code of ethics, not whatever we happen to think is ethical or not ethical. And so I think we need to make sure the public is aware of that and understands that. And then I think we need to follow through on it to get that consistency.
Commissioner Moran. Commissioner Moran. Must be on break. All right. I agree with my fellow commissioners with your points. I think the education and outreach is our top priority where we should be headed. And I agree with Commissioner Scheer, just, you know, keep the consistency. And I think part of that outreach is going to be when we do issue opinions or we decide on a case, that the public understands. They understand our decision more than just, well, this was our decision, because if they're comparing it to this case, they might not get the nuances. So we need to kind of work on that. And I think maintaining the trust of the public, that's my other priority. And I think we do that by issuing opinions and decisions that are consistent from case to case. I think that those my three would be education, outreach, and maintain the trust of the public. I think those are what I think we should be doing here. And we really have to work on the consistency and stuff. I think, you know, and in your comments here, how do we know if we've succeeded or not? I mean, that's gonna be, education outreach. Well, are we getting fewer ethics complaints, that because of the education and outreach that, people understand the laws, and if we get fewer complaints, well, then that means that we're maintaining the trust of the public going forward. I think the other way, and how will we be changed at the end of the plan? We'll have that respect that Vice Chair Teller was talking about. Okay. So those are my comments that you asked us to talk about. Commissioner
A
Moran,
question,
back yet? Yeah,
may I
Commissioner.
ask a question? Is there a cost-effective way that we can survey the public as to sort of their perception or their views of the Ethics Commission, what it's supposed to be doing, what it is doing? So we know where maybe the lack of understanding is and have the ability to try and educate better, I guess, and the public and public officers, I guess, for public employees as well. But I think the general public's important too, because I think it's important that they understand what our mission is.
Well, I would like to see us, we talked years ago before Executive Director Armstrong was here, we kept talking about do outreach to more than just the public employees. I mean, go to Rotary meetings, Chamber of Commerce, just to, start to educate. And that might be a way that we could start to get some feedback from people and stuff. And I think now that you have a education and outreach officer, I think that we can start doing some of that.
I think that's a good recommendation.
Yeah, I just off the top of my head, I don't know about a cost-effective way for the general public, but we have, I think it was you, Commissioner Scherer, who talked about NACO at the last meeting. And Sam and I had that meeting with NACO, and we're working on that partnership. And so we can certainly lean into some of our government partners to get feedback from public officers and employees. The general public's a little bit trickier, but I think I think adding a part of the strategic plan that talks about feedback, we talked about it a little bit in our metrics for advisory opinions and training, like that is an emerging theme. I can certainly work into a draft.
And if there's a way that feedback, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, Madam Chair, if I might, just on that point. I think if we can make that feedback from public employees or give them a way to provide feedback anonymously, I'd like it to be as honest and as possible.
Got it.
Well, I think, one way we can start is just by doing, whenever we do a training session, and what he was talking about was having a QR code where, you answer the questions. That would be a good start, I think. And if we can start doing outreach to non-public people, organizations and stuff, that would be a step in the right direction. And, something that I've noticed since you've been doing the training and stuff, we're reaching out to a lot more groups or public employees than we were in the past. In the past, it was like during session, we didn't have any training basically. Or, the year leading up to the session, there was no training. And now we have training all the time, and we're doing more and more. And the fact that they're calling up the Ethics Commission and asking them to come out and train, I think the word's getting out there that this is actually good training. It's not boring. It's, and you learn something. So I think that we're starting to get some momentum there, which is a good thing. So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
Commissioner Lowry, one suggestion, in my former work, we did do some surveys with our customer base, but it cost us money. It was relatively expensive. What I'm wondering is, in terms of the general public, if there are partnership opportunities with UNR and UNLV and their departments of either public policy or business and marketing, to do something with them where maybe we wouldn't incur the cost, where we could get some data around the general public's perceptions.
Thank you. I'm gonna call on our, I call her OEO. I call them OEO, our Outreach and Education Officer, Harvey. I saw you just put something in the chat. Can you just go ahead and speak to us? And tell us your idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ross had the idea recently of comparing one of our more recent cases with a historical case that was really similar, but had an important distinction in the decision the commission made and highlighting the nuances of and the background of why those decisions differed. Now, this wasn't necessarily something that we had seen the public perceived as a potential conflict or perceived as, you know, demonstrating our lack of consistency, but this could be a good model to, if you guys have a chance to take a look, I'd be happy to send it out, or it was recently published on our LinkedIn as well as our X feed, so that we can highlight the nuances of those cases through a LinkedIn article or potentially connecting with some of our press contacts to spotlight some sort of series. If there's a handful of cases that you have in mind where the public's kind of gone, whoa, hey, this sounds the same, why are you making a different decision? And we can explain those nuances. That way we can highlight and hopefully build up some of that trust in public opinion, whether we do that just through our social media channels and press releases where that seems appropriate, or connect with media, or a combination of the two to get you know, as wide of a reach as possible on that as well. And we can highlight that in our upcoming newsletters and things of that nature. So I think that might be an interesting strategy to explore, and you know, using the resources that we have already in place.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And Commissioner Moran, I see you're back. I'd like to hear from you what you think the top priorities are for the commission.
Top priorities for the commission? Well, I just think all of the above. I think that it's nice to be looking at this from a global standpoint. You know, it's nice to be looking at, you know, long-term as opposed to just the short-term items that come up from day to day, and making certain that those are consistent and compatible with what we've done in the past. And no, I love the outreach. I think the outreach is big because I think that that really generates the message. You know, three things that were, when I was looking at the agenda the other day, as it relates to this specific item, there were three things that kind of came out for me. You know, one is, and it was something that's always been on my mind about the Ethics Commission, is I've always wanted the Ethics Commission to have teeth. I wanted to be able to, when it takes a bite, I wanted it to be painful, because I think that pain in some circumstances gets people real about what their responsibilities are, whether they're ethical responsibilities or professional responsibilities, social, marital responsibilities. I mean, all of our responsibilities as people, human beings. But, you know, one was making certain that the Ethics Commission has the perception and the optics of not just being fair and impartial, but also, of course, you know, being strong and you know, not wavering. And so that was one item that was big for me. The second thing that was swirling around in my mind was, you know, the outreach part of it. And that's important because that was something going back 15 years, 20 years, when I was involved in the commission, that we wanted to do, but we just didn't really have the resources or the bandwidth to do it. So it's really nice to you know, for the director and council and staff to be really focused on this, and the statistics are great. And to hear you, Madam Chair, speak to, you know, the correspondent responses that we're getting is really good, because that's what we need. I mean, we not only want the commission to be strong and respected, but B, we want to be able to provide folks with very clear, concise information, continued education that allows them to know what their responsibilities are and be able to make good business decisions, and good ethical, professionally responsible decisions. So that's A and B. And then C is really kind of looking at what we want to accomplish in the next legislative session. And I think that's really, really important to me, because if there are things that need to be changed, even if they're really, really big asks, I think that we need to be prepared to make those requests. And I think that going into this next biennial legislative session, I think that we really need to take a look at, and I was glad that we are, which is great. We're really taking a very, very close look at the rules and regulations as they stand today in 281A, but also, what are things that we want to change? Not because we want to do something different, but because we think that it's something that will help the general public and also help our political and public officers. But I'm excited to see what that looks like. I'm excited to go in and work with the legislative arm and the governor's office in terms of trying to move the needle a little bit more. And, I see that as twofold, as that legislative priority. I see that as ask in terms of what we want to have change that's going to ultimately help the system. But the secondary component of that is money's available, because if we're undercapitalized, we're not going to be super effective. But if we're overcapitalized and we do good work, we're going to be able to get lots of good stuff done. And I think from a big picture standpoint, I think that the commission in terms of, looking at pari passu to other boards and commissions, I think that we could stand to have a little bit more money pushed our way to do our job better than what we're doing or how we're doing it right today. So those are the three things I'm looking at. Again, just to, overview. A is obviously, the perception of the board. B is that public outreach component, which I like and appreciate the efforts that we've been taking. And then C, how are we going to be relevant in the next legislative session to get what we need, which we know is going to be best for our public officers, the state of Nevada, our constituents, and everyone else, including us and our administrative staff. Is that good?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Do you want me to do, can I do it one more time and see if it's a better delivery?
No, because we got more stuff on the agenda, and our outreach officer, Harvey, has a ask of the commission.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really just a brief ask. I really appreciate and feel, trusted and valued in terms of the priority in terms of outreach and education. One thing that you can actively do today and as an ongoing effort as commissioners to act as champions for the commission and proponents of ethics and transparency is something that our chair does really well in reposting, sharing, bringing folks to our social media, so that when we are developing outreach materials, when we're spotlighting trainings, when we're providing resources, when we're doing those clarifications of, hey, this case is actually a little bit different than the other one, folks see it. So if you have connections, whether that be in real life, talking about the commission as much as possible, but practically we're posting, 2 to 4 times a week on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Just repost that for me. Make sure that all of your relevant connections, especially on LinkedIn, tends to be a little bit more effective, are following the commission page by asking them to, by reposting our materials. And then that makes a really big impact in terms of the awareness of public officials of the commission, and that makes it so much more effective in the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so everybody should be on LinkedIn and following the Ethics Commission so you can repost to your feeds. And if you are an ex-user, then please follow the Ethics Commission so you can repost and get the word out there. So thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to spotlight specific things that might be really beneficial for you all to tune into and repost if that would be helpful. We can figure out a way to do so. Just let me know. It makes the most sense.
All right. Thank you. Right, Executive Director Armstrong, do you think you have enough material to proceed to come back with a plan?
I do, yeah. If you were to give me the direction to take what we've discussed today and develop a draft strategic plan to present at the June meeting, I have sufficient insight now into the direction that the commission would like to go.
Right, I'll entertain a motion to direct the Executive Director to prepare a strategic plan for the commission. based on the feedback that he has received today, and bring a draft plan back to the commission for final approval in June, or when? Maybe August?
June is fine.
June will be fine? Okay, all right, I didn't, all of a sudden I realized there wasn't a date there. All right, do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye,
Aye.
opposed, motion carries. Good, all right, next item is do you guys need a break? Or what time is it? It's almost, we'll take a quick little break. We'll do a break before we do the hearing for the proposed regulations. We'll take like a 10-minute break, right? Right, next item is item 8, budget priorities for the 2025 legislative session. Executive Director Armstrong, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the last meeting, we talked about legislative priorities for the next session. And now it is time to talk about the budget priorities. I know we have some new commissioners from last time, so just as kind of a setting the table. The goal of this discussion will be to give direction to me in terms of what those budget priorities are. And then I'll go back and work with our fiscal team to develop them through the ordinary course of business that all agencies go through to develop their budgets. So there's a handout in your materials under agenda item 8 that talks about the budget priority discussion. The first item I want to talk about is that some of the basics. So there's flat budgeting. There's a new system to calculate each year stuff. That's all technical. Don't worry too much about that stuff. One of the things we were asked in the budget kickoff was to make sure that priorities align with Governor Lombardo's 3-year plan, which is included in your materials. For us, when you take a look at the plan section number 5, which is about government support services, most closely aligns with the activities that we do in terms of government being a service. And we're there to serve the people, and so that should be the focus. Something to also remember is that our budget is made up of approximately 72% local government funds and 28% state general fund. We have some grant funding for the online learning management system, but that expires this calendar year. Previous priorities for the commission included the what we called then the public officer, information officer ask, which was approved during the last session. And so now we have SAM, which is Sam, so that's helpful. And then we also in the past have argued for competitive salaries. And in terms of getting a commission staff equal with similar state agencies, last year we more approached it towards getting state staff closer to local staff. And then I have an error in here. So there's the package that was approved last session for all state employees is a 12% COLA in fiscal year 24 and an 11% COLA in 25. They also added retention bonuses and longevity pay. Of course, local governments have also increased their wages. And so we're still a little bit behind our local partners, but it was a substantial package for state employees last session. There was no adjustment to put us even with other agencies, but we were included in the general compensation package increase. And then one of the things that was big for us last session was based on budget building practices, we would have had a huge cut in our travel budget. But they understood that was due to COVID. And so we were able to maintain kind of flat travel funding. So in terms of the needs that we have identified internally for the commission would be the case management and publishing software upgrade, whether that's a replacement or upgrades to the current one. It is probably our, we have a pretty basic system now that is essentially just a document holding database that then can publish to the public if we need to. There will be some other things that wouldn't be like a big axe necessarily, but as we've brought the outreach and education officer on board, there are general operating costs that we haven't previously budgeted, like subscriptions to the newspaper so they can monitor all of those types of things and other access to, graphic design resources, those types of things that we estimated in building the position, but we need to do in a more formal way upcoming. We're looking at improved phone systems and internet connections. And then our lease expires at the end of this year, so there may be a potential office move. If I had to guess, I would be, if we're gonna move, they would like extend the lease until the fiscal year and then build some moving money into our budget, because we don't have currently any moving money into our budget. And then one of the thing I've been thinking about is like checking with our state administrative folks to see if there's any sort of innovative office planning. Like it would be nice if there's some sort of, whether that's like a co-working lease space down in Las Vegas. We don't need a full office like we used to have, but it would be nice if there was a place where if our outreach and education officer needs to have a meeting, that it can be, at a place where we can have a designated space, or if if I'm traveling down there, if there's a space where we could have access to, and so to see if that's something we could work into the budget, kind of a co-working space lease for a certain number of times a month. Something like that. So those are the immediate needs that I've identified internally. The case management and publishing software upgrade would be a technology investment request. And so we did build and submit that. It was due April 1st. It can always be withdrawn if the commission just decides to go in a different direction, but we did get that built to go forward on a potential case management replacement. So that is it. I'll toss it back over to you, Madam Chair, for discussion of budgetary needs.
Fellow commissioners, comments, things that you don't think we need in our budget, things you think we need that haven't been mentioned? What's the time? Yeah, I agree. The case management software, I think, would be a big improvement. Would there be a way on our website where all of our advisory opinions and stuff to be able to have them in, we're putting the subtopic on there, but it would be nice if they could be sorted by the subtopic. So if somebody wanted to look, is there a way we could ask for that to be done?
We have a contract amendment in motion with our current provider so that in the database you could sort by topic and say, I just want to know about cooling off cases, and the cooling off cases would come up. So that's in the works already, but we would, if we were to get a replacement system, that would be one of the specifications, is that the public, when they're accessing advisory or complaint cases, have a better search functionality than they do now. And then it's just the staff work of when it gets uploaded and put into the system, labeling what category it is. But that's the direction we're moving. But the current search function is tricky because, in a lot of our advisory opinions, they'll say, here's the thing you asked about, but here's like 18 other things you need to worry about in the ethics law. And so if you search that phrase, it comes up even though that's not the main topic. And so that part can be a challenge for the public trying to navigate. That's what we hear from, I would say, from attorneys who represent subjects of our complaints, is that they go to our database and they have some trouble searching. Our opinions are available in LexisNexis, but some folks use Westlaw or some other things. And so the search is a struggle, and that's on our radar.
That would be good. That would be helpful. All right. Not seeing any, I feel fine with what you've proposed here. And the moving thing, well, you need an office for our investigator when they go down to Vegas too. A place they can work.
Yeah, investigator chair usually is just like at a park so he can rough them up. But no, we do. It's kind of awkward. I think the last time investigator Terry went to Las Vegas, like he had to go to the agency that we were investigating, like their office, to go chat with them. So that's why I think exploring some of those innovative options, where we can have a place that we don't have to pay full rent for all the time, but that we have a spot where we can do some of those one-on-one meetings. It's a smart idea.
Good. Okay, right. I don't see any other comments from the commissioners, so I will entertain a motion to direct commission staff to build a commission budget for the 2025 legislative session as presented and discussed.
I can make
motion
a
for
motion
that.
to approve, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second.
Right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're gonna take a 10-minute break before we go into the public hearing for the amendment and repeal of some of the NCOE regulations. Okay, Commissioner Scheer and Commissioner Olson.
I'm here.
Yeah, I see you. Mr. Olson, are you back? Mr. Moran?
I'm back, Madam Chair.
All right, great. Okay. We will go ahead and get started. This is item 9, public hearing for the amendment and repeal of NCOE regulations. This will be a public hearing for amendment and repeal of the regulations of the commission. The purpose of this hearing is to consider public comment and take action regarding proposed amendments to the regulations of the commission. The proposed amendments are meant to update the commission's processes for greater efficiency, improve customer services, and provide for greater transparency. A workshop was held by the commission regarding amendments to its regulations on November 8th, 2023, and notice of this hearing was timely published at the following locations: State Library and Archives and Public Records, the commission's offices and website, the Nevada Legislature's website, and the Nevada Public Notice website. I'd like to ask the executive director if he has received any public comment by email to be read into the record pertaining to this agenda item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have not received public comment by email or regular mail to be written, to be read into the record.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who are attending in person or virtually who want to provide public comment? Are there any members on Zoom that would like to provide public comment?
There are members on Zoom, none of whom have requested to make public comment on this item.
This time I will ask the executive director if he'd like to provide any information about the proposed regulations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along with the notice of intent to act upon the regulation, the commission completed the need and purpose statement. In addition, at this point, typically in an administrative regulation, you talk about any small business impact. We did not do a small business impact statement. We took a look at, could any small businesses be impacted by our regulations? And the only real intersection between small businesses and the ethics law would be, I think, in the cooling off section. And we can't change the requirements of cooling off by our regulations. That's a statutory change. And so we determined that there's nothing in our actual regulations that impact small businesses. And so a survey of those small businesses was not needed. It also asked about regulations, relationships to other regulations to make sure we're not duplicating some sort of federal rule. There are federal regulations related to ethics. They apply to federal employees, not state employees or local employees. And so there's no overlap. If, as the commissioner members, we had a workshop in Tonopah to work on these between then and now. I've worked with the LCB to get the language that you have. There, in terms of changes of what you adopted in Tonopah and what you said to proceed with in Tonopah and what we have before us, there was really one area where we were seeking some clarification about the policy differences between when the executive director or the commission could enact a policy, and they took away some of that language, which is fine. And then we were going to replace the consanguinity chart with a more readable chart. They had some concerns about copyright of the image and some other things with the actual image in our proposed image. And so that's shifted to a table instead of the actual consanguinity chart. And then everything else that the commission wanted is in there. They did some changing in the section numbers and ordering as the LCB typically does. I think the most substantive things, just as a reminder for folks, is that there is a process where We don't have to do a full jurisdictional analysis on certain types of complaints that are submitted, like if they're against an anonymous person or they're not signed. It allows us to provide advisory opinions. The regulation clarifies the definition of a public officer. When they've, let's say, been elected, but they're not taking office for 2 months, it allows us to provide them services during that time. The rest of the changes really reflect some timeline streamlining and document modernization, right? You don't have to come file your paperwork at the office of the commission. You can send an email, right? There's some more flexibility for the operations of the commission. So that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions, but the wording, the materials are provided. In there, the blue language are additions, the red are strike throughs. There are 2 repeals of sections of the administrative code, which are just things we do in operation and don't necessarily need to be in code. So that meets the governor's intent to try to have less regulations. So we've done that part in terms of reducing the total number of regulations we have and streamlining the others for better services. So I'm happy to answer any questions. If the commission acts on this today, then the next step would be to file all the appropriate paperwork and then present in front of the legislative commission at some point in the future.
Right. Questions, comments from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Scheer.
Other than the consanguinity chart, what was the other section that there were substantial changes to? Trying to find it quickly.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that it is not a section because we're gonna have a section that talked about the commission can do X, Y, Z policies and the executive director can adopt other policies. And they said that in the general authority of agencies to do policies, that we were fine, like we didn't need that regulation, so they took that piece out. So it's not actually in there. But let
Okay.
me.
Well, that's fine if it's been removed. I was just trying to see what the major changes from LCB were.
Yeah, the consanguinity chart to the table is really the only big one.
Okay, yeah, I reviewed that one, so I just couldn't find the other one, and now I know why I couldn't find it. It's not in there.
Yeah.
Was it there?
Yeah, they basically said, don't do that. That'll really confuse some things potentially for you. So, okay, thanks for the help.
Thank you.
And I don't really have a problem with that their change to the consanguinity table. I think that this is actually easier to figure out, I think, so. But yeah, I don't see any other comments and we don't have any members of the public here. And no one else, so at this time, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to adopt the proposed amendments to the commission's regulations and to authorize the executive director to prepare the statement of principal reasons for and against the adoption of the regulations and any other information or documents needed to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. Do I have a motion to that effect? Right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, item 10, commissioner comments. Are there any commissioners that want to make any comments or want to identify a future agenda item? I don't see any. I just want to note for the record that our outreach and education officer, Harvey, is in attendance. They weren't able to get on right when they're having internet difficulties. So please note them as present. This time, public comment. Executive Director Armstrong, have you received any public comment by email to be read into the record since we started?
We have not.
All right. Are there any members of the public who are attending either in person or virtually who would like to provide public comment?
There are members of the public on Zoom, none of which have requested public comment at this time.
Right. With that, item 12, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second that
We're all
motion to
fighting
adjourn.
today.
All right. I think Commissioner Lowry was first and I think probably Moran, Commissioner Moran was second, right? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll see all of you guys in Winnemucca in June. Or no, we'll do our special meeting in May via Zoom, but in person in Winnemucca.
And we'll figure out a date by early next week for the May one. We'll just confirm some of the dates. I know the 15th was bad for Commissioner Scheer, and I think later in the month is bad for Commissioner Olson, so we'll nail a date down for a quick Zoom meeting. It won't be a lot.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
That's great. Thank you.